Well, today we're going to be talking about real estate and property in Thailand because a lot of people have questions about what's happening. I mean, it's been a year since Thailand sort of closed its borders, so we thought we'd better get Mr. Real Estate, Brennan Campbell, who's the CEO of Thaiger. Now, just to explain, we do share an office with Thaiger. They're at that end of the office, we're at the other end. But we have been watching over the past year as this office has been getting really busy. And I'm wondering, Brennan, what are all these people doing in the middle of a pandemic?
Yeah, I think I ask myself that question a lot as well.
But you're growing, whilst a lot of people would have thought that the market would have sort of subsided a bit.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, talking about real estate, there's so much going on at the moment, right? So if I'm being 100% honest, I was very excited to speak to you today. But there was this kind of hesitation in my head about, there's this negative connotation about the Thailand real estate market, right? And, you know, part of it is justified in that there's a lot of challenges in this market in terms of making it more transparent and making it more efficient. So, you know, we can talk about those things, we can address those things in this conversation, but what COVID has done is that it's just kind of really highlighted some of these problems that we already knew existed in the market.
So what do you sort of see as these key problems that were existing in the real estate market in Thailand before all the COVID things started?
Yeah, exactly right.
Well, what are those problems?
Okay.
Tell us the problems.
I'll tell you the problems. So you know, I think anybody who knows Thailand, anybody who's looked to buy or sell real estate themselves, I think we can break it down into kind of three major pain points. Number one is a poor online search experience, and that ultimately starts through a non-exclusive market. So properties are non-exclusive, meaning they get listed with anybody who's interested in selling them.
Sure.
And that leads to outdated, inaccurate, and duplicated listings. So that's number one, which is a big pain point. Number two is the lack of price transparency, so which leads to like a low consumer confidence. So people are buying and selling properties, but they don't know if it's a good price or a bad price. And then number three would be the quality of real estate agents, because there's no formal certification and training to become an agent, and that opens the door for, you know, anybody that is here on a holiday that wants to sell real estate. And, you know, there's a wide spectrum of good agents and then agents that aren't good. And it's those three issues compounded on top of each other that just make the process of buying or selling incredibly frustrating.
So since COVID, what has been the additional woes that the markets sort of had to suffer?
Yeah, as I mentioned, COVID has kind of just brought those issues to the attention of everybody, right? So the difference between kind of us and other people who service the real estate market is that we're very much a mission-driven business. So we're focused on fixing those challenges that we just spoke about. But looking at the impact of COVID on the real estate market, you've got to really talk about the day-to-day impact that it's had on people's lives here and living, right? So if we consider that, we look at Thailand has relatively remained not unscathed by COVID, but, you know, our day-to-day lives as people who live here,
pretty much back to normal.
Exactly. Beyond that initial lockdown. And when we compare that to, say, North America, that's, you know, an extreme opposite, where in North America, the main difference has been with the lockdowns is that people are working from home. So they're changing where they live. They're no longer commuting into a city center. And what that has done for the real estate market is it's forced people out of the city centers. So, you know, people who lived in kind of centrally populated, expensive regions now are selling and looking for larger space in surrounding kind of areas where they can get more for their money. So when we look at what's happening in that market, there's a lack of supply, right? Now, looking at COVID in Thailand is that we haven't had that impact. So people are still generally going to work, but people are looking for larger spaces here. So if we look at the difference between 2019, which was a relatively healthy market, still with those problems we spoke about, compared to 2020, we see that the condominium transfer amounts have gone down and the landed property transfer amounts have gone up. So people are looking for, you know, bigger spaces, looking for space for home offices, and, you know, looking at less densely populated areas.
So what have you all been doing over the past 12 months? You were talking about these problems existed in the market before. What is your team doing to sort of address these? You've got plenty of stuff.
Yeah, we've got a big team, so we've got a lot of people focused on addressing those 3 pain points, right? And one of the main ones being, looking at how we can use technology and implement technology combined with the access to data that we have to make that search experience and the transaction experience for buyers and sellers more transparent. Right.
I'll tell you 2 things I really liked on the website, because I sort of look around to keep my head roughly in what's happening with the market, is the fact that you can see, if you're looking at a particular property, you can compare similar sales around that area, and that gives you a really healthy guide as to what properties should be worth.
Yeah.
And the other one is the 3D walkthroughs. I mean, they're amazing, and you got it on so many of the properties now.
Yeah, so it's a big team, and that's what a lot of the people are doing, right? So we're going out, we're shooting virtual tours of project facilities and the individual units as well, because what we're trying to accomplish is that we're looking at first fixing the online search experience, right? And what that comes down to is that the quality of listings online have been so poor that people who are interested in buying or renting those physically have to go inspect them themselves, right? And that leads to, them opening up the door and saying, I hate it, because, they couldn't get a sense of what it was online.
Sure.
So for us, it's starting with that online search experience, giving people the ability to educate themselves online in terms of seeing the facilities, reviews, looking at what has transacted in that project in the past, at what price point and when, and then really just guiding them to become much more educated in the process, and making sure that those properties are actually accurate, up to date, and still available.
And you've got things like people still wanting, clearly with one of the biggest investments in their life, they're still going to want to go and touch things, see the place, feel it, see if they like the feng shui in a particular property. And the other thing, I suppose, that's still got that human element is things like the legals and the conveyancing. Well, what are you doing about those 2 aspects?
It's a process, right? So we're focused on the online search, but then the next biggest challenge is understanding the value of a property, right? So that's kind of the precursor to, you talked about physically wanting to go inspect the properties, of course, right? We're selling a lot of properties sight unseen, but more under an investment standpoint. But if you're going to live in a property, you want to go see it, right? You want to make sure it's a good fit for you. But the bigger pain point is making sure that there's price transparency. So we've built one of the first automation valuation model, which is a mathematical model specific for real estate. So if you go on FasWas now, under the search header and look at sale and click on what my property is worth, you can actually value your property now on FasWas. So you can input your information, and it's going to give you an accurate price within 5% of the transacted data. So that's, again, looking at that pain point. And coming back to your point about physically going and seeing properties in a more digital transaction, this is really the precursor to allow that to happen.
Let's look into the crystal ball, because everybody's wanting to know, when's Thailand going to open and what's going to happen. So I'm going to get you to get out the real estate crystal ball and try and predict what's going to happen. Say that people are going to start coming later this year. What's going to happen to Thailand's real estate market when the foreigners start coming back in? Yeah,
well, we're obviously very optimistic about the market, and over these past 12 months, we've really invested in addressing those problems as we spoke about. So the way that we view the market is there's this pent-up demand, right? And it's almost like a dam that it's holding back all of this water, and that Thailand has largely been seen, as we spoke, as this, this place that has been limitedly impacted by COVID, and that outside of the tourists coming in or out, that life has gone on here as normal. So
it's going to be seen as a safe haven or a sanctuary sort of location.
Once the borders open up, that pent up demand will come across, and as a real estate transaction business, the mass tourism market it's going to take years to come back.
Sure.
We appreciate that, but there is a large demographic of people who love Thailand, and they can't wait to come back, and we'll be waiting for them when it's ready.
So before the borders were closed in April last year, who were the main foreign buyers coming in and buying property in Thailand? And when the borders reopen, do you think that mix will change?
Yeah, good question. Obviously, the Chinese are one of the largest demographics. We believe that they'll come back in full effect. They'll probably be one of the first demographic of buyers to come back and purchase here.
And what are they buying? Are they buying cheap condos, big condos, expensive condos, solo properties?
So in the past, it's been kind of condos and investment condos. So I think that demographic of what they're buying will change. And we've seen that 2019 to 2020, the landed property sales have increased, right? And the actual total transfer value of those properties. So people are buying landed properties and they're buying more expensive landed properties.
Okay.
So I believe that demographic will come back and look to use Thailand as a central base. So they'll be looking for more of properties where they can live in versus investment, because it will take a while for that mass tourism market to come back to justify, investing in a pure ROI property here in Thailand. But outside of the Chinese demographic, we look at Europe, right? We look at German buyers, French buyers. We've seen a lot of interest from them, and then buyers in what we call the proximity market, so Singapore or Hong Kong as well.
Okay, I'm going to put you to the test here. Which of those markets is going to surprise you when the gates open?
Oh, in terms of surprise, I would say Europe. I would say the German and the French buyers. So with our platform, we service other geographies outside of Thailand, and we just see a huge volume of German and French buyers looking to purchase in the UAE and in Thailand at the moment.
Well, it's no surprise to me that you guys are very ambitious and very optimistic about what's going to happen, because you've just spent the last year working harder than you worked in the years before to make sure when those doors open, things are going to happen. So I praise your optimism.
And I appreciate it. We see it as an opportunity, right? And it is the silver lining in that we looked at these problems before the market, went down because of COVID. So we were already addressing them. It's just kind of sped up, and changed the consumer mindset of looking at different ways of searching and buying real estate.
Okay. I should say, just before we go, that the Thaiger has no financial interest with Fazwaz or vice versa. We do share the same office, and we sort of interact with them each week for a quick drink. We even use their tea room. But I just wanted to declare that. So this isn't really an advertisement. We are genuinely interested in what's happening in Thailand's property market, and Brennan's the best person to speak to about that. Simple as that. Thank you for talking to us.
Awesome. Thank you, Tim.
So if you'd like to find out more about Fazwaz and the property market, there's a great website you can check. It's fazwaz.com. Of course, there's other websites you can check as well, but looks like at some stage when the doors open, people are going to start buying property again. It's inevitable, because Thailand still is a great place to live. We like it here.
Love it.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us on another Thaiger Story. We'll see you next time.